The first day in office, I'm going to issue an executive order banning pharmaceutical advertising on television. All of you can see that particularly the evening news shows are just bracketed one after the other by pharmaceutical ads. And so, you look at somebody like Anderson Cooper. I think Anderson Cooper makes about $20 million, give or take. If you say he's got a $20 million salary, and 75% of that or 80% of that is coming from the pharmaceutical companies, that's who his real boss is. A lot of the newscasters are directly interested in making sure those pharmaceutical revenues are going to continue, and I'm going to end them. We're one of only 2 countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise directly to consumers. Everybody agrees it's a bad idea.
Part of what we're going to have to do is to start experimenting with new forms of journalism and how do we use social media in ways that reaffirm facts, separate facts from opinion. We want diversity of opinion. We don't want diversity of facts. That, I think, is one of the big tasks of social media. By the way, it will require some government, I believe, some government regulatory constraints around some of these business models in a way that's consistent with the First Amendment, but that also says, look, there is a difference between these platforms letting all voices be heard versus a business model that elevates the most hateful voices or the most polarizing voices or the most dangerous in the sense of inciting violence voices. And that I think is going to be a big challenge for all of us that we're going to have to undertake.
Why is it that every time someone wants to criticize Mamdani, it immediately comes back to the Jews and the anti-Israel movement instead of actually talking about his viewpoints, which is that
nobody said Jews. You just said it. You always do that. We say Israel, you say Jews. We say Israel is a government. Please don't make it about Jewish Americans. And you come back and go, you have to make it about Jewish Americans. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
Is Israel a Jewish state? Yes or no?
Yeah. First of all, okay, so Saudi Arabia is a Muslim state, and you can criticize it all day long, all day long. There's no special protection
because
for
what you're doing is you're decoding language
that
to
calls
attack
themselves
American
a Jewish state or
and
a Muslim
to say that
state.
we should not be here and we should not be in existence, and that you would be happy for other people like Mamdani to use
it. I want Israel to be safe.
Nothing of the sort.
Nonsense. You're totally lying. It's very normal for a Miller to be completely and utterly lying.
Quite frankly, I'm really sick and tired of this racist, bigoted rhetoric that comes from people like you against my husband, against my family, and my children. I am raising Jewish children in this country.
Who brought your
in which
children into this? What a weirdo.
Hallelujah. It's Thursday, episode 58 of The Whiners. I'm Ryan. There's my buddy Jeff and the beautiful Morgan and our friend I'm very honored to have on the show, Jeanine Younes, Esquire, the National Legal Director of the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee.
That's
Hey,
right.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
It's actually the American Arab, but it's hard to get that one right.
Oh, did I say Arab American? Okay.
Well, yeah, I think they did it on purpose, to emphasize that we're Americans first.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to get people thinking right off the bat. Freedom of the press, freedom of speech gets everyone angry, challenges us to even define what is lawful and what is not lawful. What did the founding fathers mean? So Janine is here to help us to understand this in a whole array of things. But before she does that, I would like to know, where do you stand on wine? And what wine are you drinking tonight?
Well, I like wine. I usually drink like Prosecco, actually. That's what I have.
Prosecco. All right.
It's from Costco, so I'm not going to brag about it.
So you buy enough to fill the cellar. Let's put it that way.
My husband does all the grocery shopping, so he's the one who thinks that I need my wine in bulk.
All right. He's a good guy. Jeff, how about you?
I just want to say that I bet half the audience is very disappointed to hear that Janine is married after that Washington Post glamorous photo. I thought the next article was going to be one of those like most eligible bachelorettes in Washington or something, but apparently not. I'm drinking a Chilean Malbec. This is the second time I've had it since we started doing the Winers.
All right. Morgan,
modestly priced as per usual.
Okay.
I'm drinking peppermint tea. I'm sorry. I'm the designated sober one in the group.
Well, but you're headed to Washington, D.C. in the morning very early. So that's your excuse, lame as it may be, but it's okay.
It's lame, but
yeah. Washington, D.C. is a place to drink when you're already there, not when you're headed there.
Not on the way. And I am drinking, it's called Hey French. You could have made this, but you didn't. It is an Italian blend, and I can't say the name of those grapes except for Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Bianco, and it's a good one, and it's average price.
Fun marketing. Look at that.
Isn't that nice? Look at that.
Yeah.
You could have made Jeff. You could drink this wine, but you probably couldn't afford it. That's
don't rub it in. Don't be
know,
such an elitist, such a snob.
All right.
Anyway, let's get to it, shall we? I want to set the tone because those I've been hungering for a guest like Janine because I'm a fake lawyer and I'm always going on about free speech and stuff. So I can't wait to find out to what extent we might agree. Those video clips, I think, sort of illustrate how sometimes people forget about the First Amendment when it comes to an issue that they think is very important. And as long as something's very, very important to them and some sort of a solution has been put forth aimed at solving this problem that's very, very important to them, they kind of skip the very important step of assessing the constitutionality of it. And I kind of think that's what was going on in each of those three videos. But we'll get to them one by one and find out. Maybe I can remove the fake attorney in front of my name to, I don't know, something a little closer to real. But I don't know if I might be a little too old to go to law school.
Well,
RFK. Should we start with RFK?
Yeah, actually, speaking of those videos, Janine, you worked and we all read the article in the Washington Post, and it was really like a shotgun. There was so much in that article. I was really, I thought it was very interesting. And even the question of you being a principled lawyer, you went all the way to the Supreme Court against the Biden administration. And it was around, I think, the vaccine question, even though you're not an anti-vaxxer. And then you worked for Jim Jordan's House Select Committee, subcommittee, going after the censorship industrial complex. Kennedy's testimony moved you to tears. So what I want to know, given that video of Kennedy, where do you stand on those things then versus now?
You mean the censorship? Sorry, what do you mean?
I don't know. It wasn't as clear. On the pharmaceutical ban.
Yeah.
But of course, you also mentioned Israel, but I think we can get to that in a little bit.
Well, let's start with what was in the opening, the pharmaceutical ban.
ban.
Well, so in sort of Supreme Court precedent, commercial speech doesn't get the same kind of protection that other kinds of speech, political speech, like when we're just having this conversation. So it can be subject to some regulation. And I'm kind of sympathetic to that because I think we want people to be able to trust what they see. If a pharmaceutical company is making certain statements about what their drugs do, we kind of want people to be able to trust that. But that said, it's still subject to some protection. So there has to be, a reasonable connection between the restriction and the ends sought. But the other problem with what Kennedy said is he doesn't really have the authority to make those kinds of rules and regulations. I mean, if Congress enacted a law that regulated commercial speech in that respect, I would be more sympathetic to it than the HHS secretary. I mean, he's not supposed to be making laws. And that was actually my former job. A lot of what I did was challenging administrative determinations that were effectively lawmaking when the executive is not supposed to have that kind of power. So we'd often concede if Congress did this, that would be fine. They could do that, but the executive can't. And it's different because the legislature is made up of a lot of people. They're democratically elected, and they represent their constituents. It's just different than having the executive branch making law effectively.
Isn't that happening a lot? The executive branch just going back even from Clinton to the present, it just increases, right?
Yeah, the administrative state has gotten out of control. And I mean, there are lots of ways in which this comes up. A lot of people probably don't even think about, like SEC proceedings. I mean, you can lose your entire livelihood. You can be, subject to very hefty civil penalties. But because it's technically a civil proceeding, you're not even entitled to an independent judge. That was actually recently, it seems to be, the Supreme Court is revisiting that. But these administrative agencies have just gotten a lot of power over the last couple of decades, and it's not, the way the Constitution foresaw things.
So I have one question. Oh, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Well, even if Congress did, you're absolutely right, of course, that it's the role of Congress. But even if it were passed by Congress, they'd have to identify some kind of a principle as a reason without, establishing, a slippery slope. And I think it would be unprecedented. I don't know of anything else. The closest that I can think of is the cigarette ban on advertising, but tobacco makers have never even challenged that. So I don't think there's any precedent for it, is there?
So, I mean, the question of the degree to which government can regulate commercial speech is definitely one that there's a lot of precedent for. It's not my area. It's not my specialty. I've never had a case involving that. I have some familiarity with the law, but I'm not an expert in that area. But it's a little bit different to me. Major companies selling products to the public, like, people can't conduct their own experiments on things. And if these things affect your health significantly, I do have some... I'm somewhat sympathetic to the idea that the government can regulate it to an extent.
Right. Well, he's backed off since then, and now he's talking about just requiring the drug makers to give more warnings about all the possible side effects.
Which was the case before 97.
Sorry, I want to clarify. He was saying basically he wouldn't allow advertising. That's different. What I'm saying is I'm sympathetic to the idea that there can be some regulation by government.
Like what Jeff's saying, right there, where you say, hey, you're going to have to, like they did before 97, they had to say everything about the drug.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be ridiculous, though. I mean, you shouldn't have to spend 80% of the commercial talking about all the side effects. Nobody would ever
come out with a better product then.
Well, a better product.
Yeah, I think that's we had your nephew on, who's in the medical field.
Yes.
And we spoke about that, how a lot of these pharmaceutical companies, they overinflate a lot of what their drugs can actually do in the commercials. And therefore you have the population not trusting these pharmaceutical agencies. So, I mean, it's definitely something to look into. And if you have a bad product, if your product is causing more side effects than providing, protection to the solution or the ailment that you have, then maybe you should revisit some different.
And what the HHS can do, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong about this, since you were saying Congress, is they can, as you say, add more regulation. Say, well, you need to be more transparent about your drug, as opposed to talking about whether you should say it or not, because it's free speech or free press or whatever.
Yeah, it's complicated. I mean, technically, HHS is really supposed to be dealing with, health and human services. Their congressional mandate is much narrower than I think they.
Okay.
So, I mean, there was, for instance, CDC, which is part of HHS and has its own specific mandate to enact. They can do some things that are specifically to limit the spread of infectious diseases. So they have some authority to have people quarantine and stuff like that. But it's very, very specific. And so the federal mask mandate, the CDC's actually was challenged on the grounds that they didn't have the authority to do that. Maybe Congress could do this, but CDC can't. They don't have this kind of authority to. And it's hard to say, okay, what's the difference between a law and a regulation? One way you look at it is like what the impact is. How many people does it impact? How significant is the impact? The government argued with the mask mandate. Well, it's not a big deal. You just put a mask on the plane. So what? And the plaintiffs who won said, well, actually it is a big deal for me. I travel all the time. It's really starting to infringe on my quality of life. There was like a disabled child in the lawsuit, I think, who couldn't travel because he couldn't wear masks.
RFK, talk about what's the proper role of HHS. RFK tried to say that anti-Semitism is a health issue.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. I was actually going to get to that. Well, he's using his authority as HHS secretary now to withhold funds from universities for not tamping down on anti-Semitism. And I was asked about for the Washington Post article for some examples of people who are very hypocritical on this issue. And a few of the ones that came to mind were friends. So I wouldn't say them, but I was like, okay, RFK is not my friend. So because he claimed to be so free speech during COVID, and he gave that speech that I was in tears over. And then the minute he gets into office, he's saying anti-Semitism is a plague, basically a plague. And so I have authority to control it by stopping anti-Semitism on campuses, which includes pro-Palestine protests. Like, that's insane.
Well, the whole Trump campaign was spearheading the fight against the censorship of the Biden administration and what they did on social media, everything.
So they postured,
So
it's more like censorship is the plague. Remember when they had the congressional hearing on censorship and several members of Congress tried to censor RFK at the hearing? Stacey Plaskett being perhaps one of the most ridiculous offenders. Let's take a look at that.
Now, many of my Republican colleagues across the dais will rush to cover that they have Mr. Kennedy here because they want to protect his free speech, that they do not believe in American censorship. This is not the kind of free speech that I know of, the free speech that is protected by the Constitution's First Amendment.
This is not the kind of free speech that I know of. Janine, have you ever heard a more vile phrase in your life?
No, I was there for that. I was actually sitting next to Jim Jordan. So,
oh my God.
That's the one where that's the hearing I was talking about where RFK was so eloquent. I was actually.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Debbie Wasserman Schultz also tried to prevent him from talking.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So it was a total about face on censorship, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, so one of Trump's first days in office, he did an executive order saying he was it was called Ending Federal Censorship and Restoring Free Speech in America. And then within, 6 weeks of that, he started arresting people for being anti-Israel, like Mahmoud Khalil, and coming up with these excuses like, well, they're not American citizens, they have no constitutional rights, which is an extremely dumb interpretation of the First Amendment, to say the least. But
Well, okay, so take what you're just saying. Actually, Jeff, you were going to show something about New York with Jose Vega, but I think it was the day after. We can come back to that. The day after Trump was elected, Harvard settled these lawsuits and adopted the International Holocaust Remembrance, Alliance, their definition of anti-Semitism. And I know that when we had Mel, the village crazy lady, on our show, that day she asked me, because here in Texas, we had adopted some definition, some law defining anti-Semitism here in the state of Texas. And this is something that you're going after.
I am. I'll be filing a lawsuit on Monday. Exactly. So I've been ensconced in this for about a month, like 60 hours a week. Yeah.
Well, so the case that you were doing, what is it called? Janine Ali, is that part of the same process? Because we were looking at that a little bit here before, and now she has a ruling against her to stay 3 yards away from, so that she doesn't pull the Jewish flag or the Israeli flag off of the lady's neck, choking her.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So is this related to what you're going to do on this?
I'm filing an independent lawsuit on Monday, but yeah, it's all related. You know, there's this push, I would say, by these Zionist groups, these pro-Israel groups, to conflate criticism of, as everybody's familiar with this knows, conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. And what they're trying to do is convince legislatures and judges that if you say things against Israel, it's because you're actually anti-Semitic and you want to deny Jews their right to self-determination or whatever. So try to weaponize civil rights law, essentially. So it's in schools, it's out of schools. Janine Ali's case is particularly disturbing. So she's a defendant, and this very crazy woman who belongs to an extremist group called Beitar, even the Anti-Defamation League, who's very pro-Israel, called them a hate group. Wow. They explicitly endorse violence against Palestinians and people who advocate for Palestinian human rights. They're very, very extreme. They actually hate me, and they call my phone constantly. So I have to put a setting on that. All calls that I don't have saved go to voicemail directly.
Well, our audience should know, right? You have one parent that is of Jewish descent and one that is Palestinian.
Yeah, sort of. My dad's Palestinian. My mom's father was a German Jew who fled Nazi Germany. Her mom was not. She was like a Protestant.
So isn't that the whole thing? You can't say anything about Israel unless you have some direct tie. I mean, aren't you qualified?
Well, there are plenty of Jewish people who aren't allowed to either. Like if you're a self-hating Jew like Max Blumenthal, and
right.
If you criticize Israel, so there's no. Yeah, but it's so Janine went to a protest organized by Code Pink, which is actually founded by a Jewish anti-Zionist woman. This woman was there, Kamara Sumral, and she was wearing an Israeli flag around her neck, like a cape. She claimed that Janine pulled the cape and choked her. She didn't, and Janine was actually acquitted at a criminal trial. But part of what they're doing is this sort of lawfare. So the Beitar woman, I think she has some fancy lawyers who I think are funded by Beitar, filed suit in civil court alleging violations of civil rights law. It's a statute called Section 1981 that prohibits racial discrimination in the making of contracts. It was enacted during the civil rights era to make it so you couldn't not not engage in business or whatever with a Black person. And it has also, it's about enforcement of the law. So you could also sue under it if the police aren't doing what they should be because of the color of your skin or that kind of thing. And so she's trying to argue that pulling on the Israeli flag cape, which Janine didn't do, but even if she did, is a violation of Section 1981. It's just crazy. And I don't think anyone thought they'd get anywhere with it, but they got a very sympathetic judge who I think saw things a certain way. And he actually found in her favor on a sort of emergency motion, granted a restraining order, and said that Kamara Sumral was likely to win on the merits of her claim, which is the most dangerous part of the decision. And he said, if pulling on an Israeli flag cape isn't anti-Semitism, I don't know what is. So you see how far this could be taken, to.
Right. Well, at least she only has to stay 3 yards away?
Yeah. But the problem is the lawsuit was for money and for more than that. So she was asking for emergency relief for the restraining order. And the judge said, okay, well, you're probably going to win on the lawsuit, so I'm going to grant you this emergency relief. And so he sort of signaled how he's going to rule ultimately, which is pretty problematic.
Oh, it's going to be the same judge.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll appeal to the DC Circuit if we have an adverse decision. I'm sure we will, because he's not going to change his mind.
Now, did you say you're filing this lawsuit independent of ADC?
No, I said no. I'm filing another lawsuit challenging. I don't get into these things too much before it's actually filed, but challenging use of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism in a public school of a base state in the country.
You're not busy enough at ADC that you're going to take on cases.
No, I'm waiting.
By the way, I was looking at the website. I don't even think, maybe I didn't really scrutinize every inch of it, but I was poking around it, and I didn't even see that the full name of the organization was even mentioned there. It just said ADC everywhere that I looked. That's how difficult it is to remember. The organization itself can't even remember it.
Well, it's a mouthful. It's not the name I would have chosen, but
yeah. Well, ADC is good. That's a nice acronym. ADC. We can remember that. By the way, adc.org is the website, right? So let's put that on there. Check that out. And you co-host the Previously Prohibited podcast with our friend Mel Whitty, the Village Crazy Lady. Whitty, is that the right pronunciation of her surname? Boy, with a great surname like that, she should use it. She just calls herself Mel, right?
That's true.
And they can follow you on X. There it is. Esquire. Does anybody call you Esquire as a nickname?
no, I hope not.
Oh, I was going to ask.
I didn't really want that, but I had to pick a different Twitter. I had to put something on the end because the Twitter handle was taken by me. I had like an account I had never like really used.
Oh, you're in competition with yourself.
Yeah, so I had to come up with another handle.
What about Barry Obama's word salad in the opening there? I almost pulled out a gun and shot myself in the head about halfway through that while he was
regulating speech, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not making clear like what he's exactly trying to say. He's like, and they always say this. Oh, of course we don't want to violate the First Amendment, but also people can't just say whatever they want. That would be crazy.
Yeah. Well, if it causes violence. Well, we already have a law like inciting a riot is already a law. I don't think we need new ones, right?
If you incite, it's a very narrow exception. If you incite people to imminent lawless action, and it's from a case called Brandenburg, I've had to do with like a white supremacist rally. And the judges said what the guy did was not enough. He was sort of making a lot of really racist statements, and they said, no, that's not inciting. You have to sort of be, really, I would say riling up a crowd or at least a couple people and sort of suggesting that they go engage in violence. And it's my theory that this doctrine shouldn't be applied, or this exception shouldn't apply at all to social media, because it's really about the fact that the speaker is sort of taking advantage of people's emotions and they're getting very excited and they can't control themselves. But whenever there's you're somewhere, you'd have to go somewhere else to go.
Yeah, there's no imminence. It's like if you're in front of a mob and you go, get that guy now, and the mob jumps on him. That's what it's about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it shouldn't apply at all to social media.
All right. So let's just clarify. If I were to say hypothetically that Ryan Milton deserves to be pummeled viciously, and then a week later, Morgan slaps him silly, I'm not guilty of a crime.
On Facebook.
That's Morgan. So, it's the person who does the action.
Right, yeah.
We're all adults who should be able to control ourselves.
Right.
Morgan would be guilty of a crime.
Yeah, exactly.
Restrain yourselves, Morgan.
Well, so I keep thinking back. Zuckerberg went before the Senate and said the Biden administration threatened us, so we had to censor people.
Yeah.
On social media. So, but then now you've said the Trump administration, in your view, is doing the exact same thing, and we've given some examples. So how do you break this cycle? It's like the next guy that gets elected, they're just going to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, I actually think what Trump's doing is significantly worse. It took me a long time to say that, because I was like, well, what Biden did was actually be more behind closed doors, so it was harder to hold him to account. That was one of the problems with the case we brought to the Supreme Court, was the court basically said, you just don't have enough proof that your clients were censored because of the government's actions. The social media companies might have decided to censor these people anyway, and you have to show this link. And if the government's sort of operating covertly, it's very hard to show that link. Trump makes it pretty obvious, because he's just like, we're going to deport that guy for what he said. So it makes it a lot easier. But I do think the gravity of the punishment that the Trump administration is levying on people, like being put in behind bars, being deported, getting expelled from school. That's much more severe than getting kicked off social media, which I understand. Like, I'm very sympathetic to the fact that some people make their livings off it. To some people, it's not a small deal. But I do think, getting removed from the country and away from your wife and newborn is a more severe punishment than losing your social media account. And that just has the effect of a very severe chilling effect. I mean, people look at that and they're like, well, I can't risk it. So, and even citizens, I think, are like, well, we don't know. We might be next. They might try to denaturalize people. They might try to use material support for terrorism laws. I mean, if a woman writing an op-ed in her school paper, like Rameza Ozturk, if that's anti-Semitic and counters U.S. foreign policy in a way that allows them to keep her in ICE detention for 8 weeks, they could just stretch the definitions of material support for terrorism or other things like that to put me in prison. So the chilling effect is so severe that I think it makes Trump's campaign worse.
Well,
Janine, do you feel the tide is turning and you might be ahead of the curve in a sense? For example, last week, our guest was Jose Vega, who's running for Congress. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
He came on our show, actually.
Oh, okay,
Really?
great.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how Mamdani's popularity in New York might portend success for Jose, because people seem to be much more open. I think, Morgan, you're the one who put it as people are open to anti-AIPAC candidates.
Yeah.
And so I think the larger way of saying that is people are just not buying Israel's crap anymore.
Yeah.
And in the Washington Post article, you were talking about how, both sides kind of give you grief. And you, like you just said, think that this discrimination is more egregious than even what was going on in the Biden administration. So do you feel like you might be ahead of the curve and there's a chance that the time is right to score some victories here?
I hope so. I mean, yeah, I think you're right. And I think Mamdani's ascent is sort of emblematic of what's going on in the country. People are really sick of this requirement that politicians pledge allegiance to Israel. And people have different degrees of sort of disgust with it. And some people are just like, I mean, this is weird. Maybe I'm not horrified by it, but I think it is. I mean, it's there was a candidate, Congressman Seth Moulton, who just gave back his AIPAC money and said he wasn't taking it anymore when he had taken it before. I think so. It's all part of a broader trend that taking support from pro-Israel lobby is more of a liability than it is a benefit.
That's egregious, right? That's out in the I mean, everybody knows it. It used to be the case you were a conspiracy theorist 20 years ago if you said any of that.
Yeah, when you look at AIPAC's Twitter themselves, or X, whatever you want to call it, and they boast about it. Every politician that we backed won. Every anti-Israel candidate lost thanks to us, or them putting $20 million into or taking out Jamal Bowman and putting in Latimer. They're just open about it.
Yeah.
But you say
Is that why Trump is owned, so to speak, by Miriam Adelson? Because he's like, well, Trump already has been elected. And so I'm like, on one hand saying, why does he have to kowtow to her anymore? Is it because of the congressional candidates that he feels so deferential toward her?
It could be that. I mean, I can only speculate. Some people I know think that they have stuff on him, and that's what it's about. Since he doesn't need to get elected, and he doesn't really,
Oh, like the equivalent of the pee tape, but in Israel instead. He went to the Wailing Wall and peed on somebody, or vice versa.
I think that Trump really values people who have money. So the Adelsons, they're kind of like this power that he wishes to obtain, having the billion. He even said it at the Knesset, she's got, what was it, $20 billion in the bank, and then what is it? I can't remember the metric or the amount that he says, and then he goes, she said she has more. With these these little starry eyes. I think that's what taps in with Trump, is that it feeds into what he kind of aspires to be. And then also with the Kushner family, they're heavily tied with the Netanyahu family. So you have kind of this family reunion going on where they're all scratching each other's back, even though these awful atrocities are happening to get what they want. So that's that's what I think plays into it. It's also at play, is more of this ego, lust for money and greed.
Yeah, that may very well be the case.
Somerville John wants to know what's the name of the judge who issued that order that you were talking about in the choking case, the alleged choking.
Yeah, McFadden.
And that's his last name. His first name, let's call him Sparky McFadden.
I actually forgot what his first name is. So
That's why I came up with a name for you. Sparky McFadden. That's his name. Wouldn't that be great if it is Sparky?
It's not. It'll ring a bell when I hear it.
Well, let's talk about the media. The Ellisons are Larry Ellison and his dad are buying out all these media companies, and Barry Weiss, your pal, I think you posted a very nice tweet about her that was mentioned in the Washington Post article, is taking over CBS News. What's your take on that?
It's terrible. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's all.
Well, it's probably not completely terrible, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, maybe it'll just like contribute to the decline of mainstream media, which it totally deserves. So, but I mean, it's, the Ellisons, I mean, the father just bought TikTok. So, this is obviously part of an attempt to try to control the media on, these are big pro-Israel people. And
please use the correct new name, Janine. It's TikTok.
Oh my God.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, they're going to throw me in the slammer.
That's worse than calling X Twitter. You've got to.
You didn't endorse that. You didn't endorse that. That was Jeff.
Guilty. I'm sorry. What did you say?
I enabled him though. So
you hit the button.
The Zionist lobbies, like their biggest not fear, but they recognize that social media is their biggest problem because the kids aren't pro-Israel anymore. And that's because they get their news from social media and they can see the films directly, of kids being blown apart every day that like we couldn't see when we were that age. And it's changing things in a significant way for support for Israel. And they recognize that they're not going to have the control over politics that they do now very soon. So they're trying to buy it up to control it. I mean, the whole TikTok ban was clearly motivated by an attempt to suppress anti-Israel content.
And of course, Charlie Kirk, again, he was all over the place. People see it where he's questioning it. And if he can question it, then that means everybody can who's young.
Well, could he question it?
Well, he did. And then, you got me there.
By the way, to clarify what I meant by it's mixed, I mean, with respect to the Israel narrative, of course, it's terrible news. But on the other hand, CBS was really boring, and Barry Weiss is not without talent. So I imagine CBS might be a somewhat more interesting place than it was previously.
Maybe.
In other words, apart from that issue. LOL. What does LOL mean? I've never seen that.
Laugh out
loud.
Oh, okay. You're funny. Laugh out loud.
Yeah, the Ellison family consolidation is really scary. I think that goes hand in hand with the what I think Trump really aspires or idolizes is that realm of people, like the Palantirs, the Ellisons, the Adelsons, and so they're actually the ones that are really in charge here, calling the shots, having access to the White House whenever. And he even said it at the Knesset, like that, the Adelsons, they would just come over whenever they wanted to. And he did, kind of boasted that I'm the president. You can't just meet me whenever. And then he would have a meeting with them. Yeah. So I think that's what really alarms me. You have Ellison also making like the comments of they'll all behave, this mass surveillance thing that they want to push.
Yeah.
So that's,
So, Morgan, the thing that concerns me, I think what you're saying about Trump is true. He is really about the pomp and circumstance, and I've done this, and, I've gotten peace everywhere, and I just signed a deal with my good buddy Xi in China, and I've lowered the tariffs, and they're going to send us the rare earth metals. But what concerns me is that you have institutions of the government that should really be under the watchful eye of the Congress that are being privatized. That's the Palantir and that kind of thing. So now they're not only going to make money off of it, but we're not going to get to see what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem. Actually, I see, Jeff and I, Jeff, are we allowed to talk about the other topic? Your favorite topic? Is it too soon?
You mean my obsession?
Yes, your obsession.
Yeah, we should, because it's in the news now. They but they proposed another dopey amendment aimed at overturning Citizens United. So, Janine, I hope you back me up on this. If not, I'll still love you. But to me, this is like, it's not the only litmus test, but it's a litmus test. And I think it's important because so many people, like I was saying before, it's aimed at a terrible problem, right? Money influences politics too much. And because there's really no other solution out there, this decision is denounced, and the whole idea of regulating what's spent on speech is applauded. And my very basic argument, I think, is in line with the reasoning of the courts, as well as the ACLU and others, is that the behavior to be regulated was never even defined in a way that's clear. Anytime somebody takes away a freedom and then somebody files a lawsuit and says, no, this exceeds the government's authority, there has to be a way to resolve that. And nobody has ever said anything more specific than they want to regulate what's spent on speech that might affect an election. That doesn't tell us what would not be subject to regulation. And especially when it comes to freedom of the press, these people aren't saying anything at all about the freedom of the press clause and the First Amendment. Their whole thing is, oh, corporations shouldn't have this right, but press organizations are frequently, at least the major press organizations, are corporations. So here they are saying nothing in this article shall be construed to grant Congress or the states the power to abridge the freedom of the press, which sounds like they're saying the press is exempt. Well, who and what is the press? Isn't the press all of us? I'll shut up now. I'll get off my soapbox. Ron,
Yeah.
It's the litmus test.
I'm not an attorney, but Jeff and I have been talking about this for, at least a week, but really it's been on and going. But you are somebody who knows something about law. So
yeah, I will say, so I tried to refamiliarize myself with this and I didn't have a chance because I had a very
That's okay.
So I have not read Citizens United in a decade at least, but it's not
long.
super fresh in my mind. Yeah, I know that was every time I pulled it up, I was like, I don't have time for this. I'll start it. But I don't know how Congress can overturn a Supreme Court case. That's kind of basic. I mean, they just can't. The Supreme Court is they're the final interpretation of the Constitution. So, I mean, that's not even a statement that makes sense to me that Congress wants to overturn.
Well, that's a phrase they're using, meaning that their constitutional amendment will supposedly enable some type of regulation that they want. But they really have no idea as to what the regulation is. That's what I'm saying. They have no idea.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize this was a constitutional amendment. I thought
that's what they're talking about. And they do come up with this on a regular basis to amend the Constitution to eliminate Citizens United.
Right.
And I guess
Bernie Sanders, the guy who you used to support, this was a big issue with him a few years ago. It was his number one issue actually for a while. And his amendment was almost exactly the same. And throughout the years, there's been different amendments. They're all almost exactly the same. And nobody actually can specify the behavior to be regulated.
Yeah. Well, that's a problem. I do think I don't like the Citizens United decision. I mean, from what I remember of it, I mean, I think it's a big problem to conflate speech and spending. That's just not the same thing. But I think there were probably good parts of it too.
Well, that's the challenge that I have with it is that if it's what Jeff has gone through, really talking about freedom of the press, it would have made it a very easy thing and nobody would have argued. But in the arguments, they spent a lot of time talking about financing and money and things like that. And I think that when you look at the fact that it was the pivot where money just took off into politics, then you know there's something that happened there, and I can't quite figure it out if it created some kind of a loophole.
No, let's not make it so complicated. The point is that a spending limit was used to restrict speech. That's the issue. And when people say, oh, money isn't speech, they're just sort of avoiding that issue. The spending limit was used to restrict speech. What if, Janine, they said for the demonstration that's happening tomorrow, the pro-Palestine demonstration, you're not allowed to ride the subway?
Yeah.
Would you then say, oh, that's good because subways aren't speech? It's, they're using this other thing to get at speech.
Yeah, that's true. And one reason I'm reluctant to weigh in on it is I'm not confident about my assessment because it's very complicated and that's not my area.
It is complicated.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'll get off my high
I will
horse.
say I was at a Federalist Society conference a couple of years ago, and there was sort of a lot of the conservatives were actually trying to think of ways to get rid of Citizens United. It was interesting. So it's not now. It was not just a left-wing thing anymore.
Yeah, that's what I've noted. Now, here's what I'll say. One little thing to this, and then we can move on. Jeff, I actually do think that what Jeff is saying is that it's stupid to have an amendment to try to get rid of that, because that could also be a slippery slope, right? Yeah. But similar to, say, like the pharmaceutical ad regulation, you could have regulations that say non-political, non-profit organizations which aren't required to disclose their donors, they might have to start having to disclose them, or super PACs can't set up shop 20 days before the election so that they can hide disclosing their donors till after the election. They could maybe do some things like that at least say you got to be transparent. I don't know.
Well, as of now, it's not. The court has allowed disclosure laws, so that's a possible avenue.
They get around it. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think there's also a guy named Elon Musk that we should talk about. What is your take? Because you have been known to issue a provocative tweet or two on occasion, Janine.
Yeah.
We didn't specify the one you said about Barry Weiss. I don't know if you want to, but anyway, almost anything goes now on X. So how important is Elon Musk, and what's your assessment of the climate on X now?
Well, it's very nasty.
Yeah.
I feel like it's gotten really nasty, and people complain about it, but I'm like, well, if you don't like it, just don't do it. Like, you're not entitled to a nice, warm and fuzzy social media platform. I don't know. It has something about the algorithm has shifted, it seems to me, in the last couple of years. But on the other hand, it is pretty good on free speech, I think. I do think they suppress a lot of anti-Israel content, but it's still better than almost every other platform or every other.
Now, when you say suppress, do you mean disallow it to be posted, or do you mean suppress and just how noticeable it is?
Yeah, I think the algorithm just favors it.
Yeah, you get, what do they call it? Shadow banning.
Yeah.
You get shadow banned. But I mean, to your question, you had to take down that post about Barry Weiss. Why would you have to? Isn't it First Amendment protected?
Well, sure. I didn't have to. I took it down. Let's say.
I mean, what if it was funny? If it was funny.
So
you thought it was the diplomatic thing to do, right?
No. So I actually dashed it off over breakfast. Like, I was feeding my son breakfast, and he's very little, so he's not. That's why. But and I was just like, oh, whatever. I'm just gonna tweet that, and I didn't think anything of it. And then I looked at my phone, and it had just gone crazy, and all these people were saying horrible things. And the Washington Post had been working on this article, and they were like, I don't know if we can publish this now that you called Barry Weiss Goebbels. So I delete the tweet.
There you go. The audience was wondering what the hell we're talking about.
Yeah, so they said, if you delete the tweet, that'll help. And then Mel called me and was like, what were you thinking? Now there's no blood.
Wait. Was Mel against you deleting the tweet?
Yeah. She says never delete a tweet. Then you're basically admitting error. So then I did a sort of
she's sassy.
She is feisty.
She's North Carolina internet royalty.
Yeah.
Morgan and I live in North Carolina also.
Oh, okay. That's
we're in the same cult.
So you redid it, you said.
So I didn't redo it. I just said something like, maybe I shouldn't have used that kind of language, but here are the reasons I said it. So it's sort of not apology, but
sorry, not sorry.
They say when you're explaining, you're losing. So
yeah.
That's
All right.
funny.
All right.
Yeah, I can see Mel saying that.
Yeah.
I'm very hesitant to get into say nasty things on Twitter, or even I'm not even a really prolific tweeter. I don't really tweet.
But
I have to stop myself all the time. I like want to call people retards all the time, and I just
Doesn't it feel good though to do
That's
that?
coming back. For a while, that was a big no-no, but that's kind of coming back.
Oh, for it. Please call people retards. I'm so
I
loving
feel like
it.
it's not good for professional reasons. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Remember, I
just-
scolded you when we were out to eat once, and we were some strangers we encountered were taking pictures of us, and then Ryan said something about retarded, and I'm like, I scolded him. For all you know, they have a retarded kid.
I mean, of course, I would never insult an actually intellectually disabled person. It's just there's something about it. It's
Right. Well, it's like the FAGGOT word. You're not really, it's not really anti-homosexual, but still, it's a little problematic to say it. That's why I spelled it.
Seems like this is not going into the territory I like.
Don't worry, I won't go.
I could just call people. I'd probably type out like, how stupid are you, like 10 times a day, and then before I post it, I delete. I'm like, okay, I don't need to be 10 years old.
I mean, our Secretary of War was calling everybody fat.
Yeah.
Now
Oh,
that's
yeah, well,
fat.
you can
shame.
say fat.
I don't
Well, I
know.
like
don't
that
know.
Mel was, so like absolute about it. She's not shy. That's one of the reasons she's so good online. Tell us a little bit about Previously Prohibited and how often you two are on and what it's like.
And how do you put together the show even? Because sometimes it's fast.
Oh yeah, we don't do anything. We do no prep, which probably shows. I'm in like a work crazy period right now, so I can't do it. We sometimes do a little bit more planning and have guests, but so we started it about almost a year ago actually. And I had tried to do a podcast by myself, and I didn't like hosting alone, so I gave up. And then she had come on my podcast, and I thought we had a good rapport. So a couple months later, it just occurred to me, I thought we had a good we're kind of different enough to make it interesting. But we have enough common ground that, we would have subjects we would want to talk about. So I asked her if she wanted to do it. And she was like, oh, yeah, it's funny. I was thinking of starting one, but I didn't know who to do it with. So we just, yeah. And so we go through periods where we have a lot of guests. And then we've been on a streak of no guests because I can't plan in advance at all, basically.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
that's good.
your
that we can-
dynamic really reads like you guys have been friends for a while. So
We actually have only met in person once, and it was last month. It was so weird because it's not only do we do the podcast, we were on the phone together for hours. Like when I wasn't working so much, we were on the phone for hours a day. Now I feel my way to the metro.
well, that's you picked a good one then, because that's you couldn't tell, and you guys really have a really good connection. And
Yeah, we had a great time with her, and we're having a great time with you. Before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to promote? Any other cases? Anything else you want to say about the ADC or anything at all?
No, actually, there is one thing I should say. I should clarify about the watch so they don't get mad at me if they happen to be listening, which I'm sure they're not. But the Washington Post reporter actually did not. So he said his editors were giving him shit. And I was like, would it help if I took the post down? And he was like, that would be unethical, but I'll leave that to your discretion. So I read into that. It would help if I took the post down. So I did. I wanted to make sure that I didn't make
He
it
meant it would be unethical for them to ask you to do
Right.
because he was like doing a journalistic, so he couldn't tell me what decisions to make in order to get the article running. So I wanted to make sure I didn't make him unfairly look bad because he actually did not tell me I should take it down.
Oh, you're a nice person.
Well, it is good to know that you seem to be a principled attorney, and that's the focus of that article was you fought for people, and I mean it's really a broad fight that you've waged. You fought against the bad things in the Biden administration. You're fighting against the bad things in the Trump administration.
Thank you.
People need to see that that's possible, and that doesn't mean that you're now somehow flipping around and going crazy or something like that.
Yeah.
It's a principle.
Everybody thinks so much in terms of their political side that it's very hard for people to understand that. I'm like, no, when it's Gavin Newsom as president, I will also be suing him. I guarantee you, whoever is in office, I'm going to be suing.
What about AOC?
Who else?
What about
Who else?
AOC?
Are there any other either organizations or individual attorneys who are comparably principled on First Amendment issues.
Fire.
I'm thinking that the
Fire.
ACL, Fire, right? They're great, and I'm thinking the ACLU used to be, but is no longer.
No, they're pretty. They're pretty just left wing, like maybe even like Democratic Party.
Right.
They came out being pro-vaccine mandate during COVID. I was so disgusted. They tried to make some argument that vaccine mandates help the vulnerable, so therefore it's pro-civil liberties to require people to take an experimental vaccine. I was like, that's the most twisted argument I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's a crazy time.
What a trajectory that organization has gone through over the years. When you think back historically to how principled they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, they were the Skokie case. They defended the Nazis marching in Skokie. That was like the famous,
quintessential example. Yeah. And FIRE, unfortunately, they have a bad name because FIRE means like a million different things, but it's an acronym for the Foundation
for Individual Rights and Expression. They started solely defending people on college campuses. They actually made their name defending like conservatives who were being, the subject of censorship on liberal college campuses. And so they were the Foundation for Individual Rights or something in education. But then they got a lot bigger. They got a lot of money. They got a lot bigger, and they decided to start doing stuff outside of campuses. They changed their name, but not the acronym, which was probably smart because people, had started to recognize them. But they're very principled, and they've been defending. I mean, they submitted an amicus brief in support of Mahmoud Khalil, and they're doing. They've been very principled on the Trump censorship stuff. I'm friends with a lot of people there, and they're they're great, really principled attorneys.
Are there any individual First Amendment attorneys who aren't affiliated with an organization that impress you in particular?
Alan
Dershowitz?
I take that as a no.
Worst person ever.
Is that because he represented
the Epstein thing? Is that what you're?
No, because he's super pro-Israel. That's.
Yeah. But what about throughout his career?
Yeah, I guess maybe.
Okay, so that's a no. Oh, it's all right. I mean,
my dad, being Palestinian, was very pro-Palestinian, and Dershowitz to him was like Hitler.
Right.
He would say Dershowitz had the same implication as Hitler. So I don't know that they ever actually objectively looked at his body of work. It's just embarrassing.
The Israel thing just makes it impossible.
Yeah. But maybe I do think he did some good civil rights work. But for specific First Amendment, I mean, Glenn Greenwald, but he doesn't practice First Amendment law.
Glenn Greenwald's great.
Yeah.
Well, that he's the one that posted the Piers Morgan argument that we were just seeing.
Yeah,
that was in the intro, and that's when I saw it today, and that was mind blowing.
I watched that twice last night because I just couldn't believe it. I was like, did that really happen?
That's what you should use, instead of retarded, weirdo. That's a good
weirdo.
That woman we're talking about, for those of you
anti-Semitic, what?
You know what? People who saw that, if you guys were talking about what was in the opening, that was Stephen Miller's wife. What's her name? Katie, I think.
Miller.
Katie Miller.
Yeah, that was Stephen Miller's wife in the opening that we're talking about.
And then she's trying to get her husband to deport Schenck now, who's been here since he was 8.
Well, that was
funny.
What do you think about? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Just calling someone a weirdo in an argument's really funny.
Well, on this question of deportations and all of this, Tucker Carlson was talking yesterday, I think it was, where he said, the whole Venezuela thing, which we didn't even get into with you, about Trump sending ships down to Venezuela, the threats to invade. But he made a point. That's not a
First Amendment issue, though.
It's not a First Amendment issue. But what is that all of these drug gangs are not really from Venezuela. And he said, well, why don't we just be deporting those people, the drug gangs here in the United States, from Mexico in particular? That's not really First Amendment, though.
No.
It just made me think about it, though, when you said deportations. So
yeah, the latest trend is to threaten to deport everybody you don't like.
Yeah.
Well, what is a First Amendment issue regarding Tucker is that he just interviewed Nick Fuentes, who's also a very naughty boy, and Glenn Greenwald interviewed him recently too. So he's really exploding. You have any take on Nick Fuentes?
Literally just went for a run right before this and listened to that. I only got 40 minutes in, but
What do you think?
I like, obviously I'm not a white nationalist, so but
Obviously.
I was interested in Fuentes' views. I obviously agree with him on some things, and it's very interesting to hear. And he is smart. I mean, no one can deny that, and very well spoken. And he's insightful. So it's very interesting to hear about how he has reached the beliefs that he has, and it seems to me that he's probably been unfairly smeared a little bit. I don't like this kind of language about how immigrants can't possibly share our values, especially since I don't think a lot of Americans share our values, since nobody seems to believe in the First Amendment anymore. But
Or do they even know what the values are? That's
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing to me is that he was so radioactive before because of these views, but now Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson interviewed him, and some people would object to what they call platforming. Yeah. But I mean, he's already got a huge platform. So I think no matter what the view is, if somebody is very popular and controversial, just have them on and, let people judge for themselves. That's what I like.
Well, isn't that better?
Yeah. And,
What?
you can ask tough questions. Like,
Right.
I mean, if you just do a softball interview with somebody who's known, has some questionable views, then I think that's not the best. But
We tried to find your questionable views.
probably have some.
Well, I didn't look long enough, so.
All right. Well,
right.
Janine's got a life beyond podcasting, so let's let her have her evening with her family. You have a husband and one child, or more than one?
Yeah, one. He's two, so he's like he's almost two. He's hit the terrible twos early. It's challenging right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
All
yeah.
right.
Let's remind people also the Washington Post article, this free speech defender makes enemies left and right.
Were you happy with the article, Janine?
Yeah, I actually was. Yeah, I thought it was very, so the reporter, I know, to be fair, that's one reason I agreed to it. He's started writing about my Supreme Court case. And so I had given him I'd spoken with him in the past, and he'd always portrayed me fairly. That doesn't always happen.
Right.
No,
Well, clearly you are a free speech superstar. Good for you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
thank you very
Thanks.
much, Janine.
All right.
See ya.
And thanks to our beloved audience. Join us again next week at the same time for the next episode of The Whiners. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Now, many of my Republican colleagues across the dais will rush to cover that they have Mr. Kennedy here because they want to protect his free speech, that they do not believe in American censorship. This is not the kind of free speech that I know of, the free speech that is protected by the Constitution's First Amendment.